It all started in 2012. So, 2012, I was training at my local CrossFit gym. And at the end of a particularly epic training session, one of the guys I was training with said, "We beasted it today." And I thought, beasted it. Beast. Beast Gear would be a cool name for a CrossFit or a
Yeah.
strength and conditioning brand.
Yeah.
And so naturally, I did absolutely nothing about it for 4 years. I did nothing about that idea until 2016 when life circumstances forced me to. So I'm from Aberdeen in northeast Scotland, and Aberdeen is an oil town. And so although my
Yeah.
background is environmental sustainability, I worked in the oil industry as basically the token dolphin hugger. My job was to get oil companies to be greener. And unfortunately, I had to stop work for maybe 7 or 8 months whilst I recovered from a heart condition. And in that same time, of course, I couldn't take part in my fitness hobbies. And I remembered the idea of Beast Gear. And I needed something to do. My then girlfriend, now wife, was studying, and she encouraged me to get off the sofa and do something. And so I started this idea of, well, I could develop these fitness products, maybe earn a bit of pocket money, give myself something to do, some better training gear for me at least, really just as a hobby. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. And to cut a long story short, which maybe we can dig into, I ended up quitting my job, growing the business, and eventually selling it.
Wow. Okay. We're speeding through all of that.
Yeah.
I think as I was saying to you the other day, we had a bit of a pre-chat, didn't we? And you're looking fine in your gym outfit there. I was going like, I wish I looked like that. So you were pretty massively into the gym then. You're doing strength workouts. You're doing like cardio stuff. You were really going for it.
Yeah, I was into boxing and CrossFit.
Right.
At the time, and I still am I like both of those things now. My training's a bit different now, but yeah, I'm really into getting outside, whether that's hiking up a mountain, of which we have plenty up here, or training in the gym or going for a run.
So you're the super, because I started reading this in the book, and I get the particular condition, but it's like this man is one of the fittest people I know, and I haven't known you for that long, and your doctor is saying you've got to take it easy because you've got a heart condition, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Life is not meant to be like that. You're doing the right things. You're probably eating the right foods, drinking lots of water, doing loads of exercise, and then the doctor says you can't do anything. What? Where did that come from?
Totally. So it wasn't like a heart condition. Like it was a heart condition called pericarditis. So anything with itis in the name means inflammation, and the pericardium is the little bag that your heart sits in. And it's actually reasonably common in guys in their 20s to get pericarditis. And typically you might get it once and it will go away and you might resolve it with some anti-inflammatories. I got it 3 times. And the 3rd time, the doctor said, we need to nip this in the bud and throw all of the drugs at it. Or it could, instead of being an acute thing, it could become a chronic life-altering thing.
Yeah.
That was quite scary. So I had to basically stop everything and take a cocktail of drugs whilst I kicked this thing into touch.
Yeah. It's just mad, isn't it? Every second counts, and something strange can happen. And no, it's not a heart condition per se, but the inflammation around the heart that's just stopping you. But that was the big opening point, wasn't it? And I think for so many of us, and I remember when I was in the corporate days, and I've got to go and do something. I can't stand this anymore. They don't care. I don't really care about what I'm doing for them. All they care about is their director bonuses. It's a horrible corporate. How do I do that? Where do I find the time? Because I've got to have some downtime. And this is the perfect opening in your life, wasn't it? To actually I can actually get on with this and start thinking about it.
Yeah. So I was signed off work. And that gave me the chance to sit down in a non-stressful, worky kind of way and just start figuring this stuff out. So I had no business experience, no product development experience, no marketing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I literally Googled and YouTubed and podcasted my way to figuring this out. I
Yep.
Googled on how to find factories and manufacturers. And
Right.
I guess it's something that most of us in our day-to-day lives, when we're buying and consuming products, we don't think about. You don't
No.
think about, I thought business and specifically building consumer product brands, I thought that was for other people. I thought it was for people who had a business degree or a product design background or inherited a business. I never really thought that I could be empowered to build a relationship with a factory on the other side of the planet, develop a product and work with product designers to take my ideas and turn them into a reality and have them made for me, contract manufacturing, bring them over to the UK and then mainland Europe and sell them online to other members of the public.
Yeah.
It turns out you can.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's that mad thing from what you were doing before in environmental science and environmental engineer, as they called you, into a fully fledged e-commerce business designing a product from scratch. And I think that's the thing. And I started drawing this out, because what I'd love to do with the channel is, and in fact, what your book does brilliantly, and I'm about a third of the way through, is it's the steps. And I think that's the thing for people is like, well, how do I do it? Where do I start? And the thing I started drawing out, I won't show it because it's embarrassing. I do lots of mind maps, how to start a business and a brand. And then the next thing I go to is find your product, and you have to be passionate about it. And you're super passionate about, your health and fitness and going to the gym. So what was the first product that you thought, I can actually do this? You found the factories and everything, but what was that first product? What was the product you actually thought, actually I could do this? It's not an elliptical unit, it's not a treadmill, it's not complicated, but what was it?
Well, so I was unwell, I was pretty miserable, fairly depressed actually. And I was tidying out my gym bag, the duffel bag where I kept all my training gear, and kind of sadly looking at my kit thinking, well, I'm not using this, that sucks. And I picked up the skipping rope that I used for boxing and CrossFit. And many people listening or watching might think a skipping rope, it's just a bit of rope or plastic with a couple of handles. But actually, a speed skipping rope, there's a bit more to it than that. And I wasn't particularly happy with the one I was using. I felt like it could perform better. And also it could frankly have looked cooler. And that was when I remembered Beast Gear, that idea from 4 years before.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, this is made somewhere. Somebody makes it. And the person who started that brand, before they started, they were in the same position I am now. So I opened my laptop and I started Googling. And it all comes down to two things. Your business should be, so to me, a brand is a group of products that solve problems for a particular group of people. And in my case, strength and conditioning. So your brand should do that, should solve problems for a particular group of people. And your first product really should be a product around which you can build your entire brand. And I knew that if I started with the skipping rope, I could solve the same problem that other people like me had. The skipping rope or jump rope, if you're American, wasn't performing well enough in a few different ways. And it didn't look cool enough. And there was a gap for a better performing and cooler brand. And I went and filled it.
So the skipping rope felt like an achievable first product, because if I was looking across the range and going like, what do I deal with? And another thing to that, to that point, Amazon, you go through and the Chinese firms have either done copies or poor copies of these, skipping ropes or whatever they're creating, and they've got such traction, they flood it with such positive reviews. It's always higher up, so you have to go really searching, in my view, for really high quality bits of kit, or you have to know what to look for. You have to go and read the magazines and do a lot of research to do that. But so the skipping rope is where you started. You went to the factories, you got the design underway. You're skipping so many, pardon the pun, you're skipping so many steps. What else do we need to do? So you actually sit there and design the skipping rope and what materials you wanted that you fed to these I presume each factory must have their own design department as well.
Yeah. Yes and no. And this again is why it's so accessible to quote unquote normal people who don't have a background in this. So I identified a range of factories, all of whom were in China, and I asked them all to send me their off-the-shelf samples of their skipping ropes. And I tested them myself, and some athlete friends of mine tested them. And I went back to them with feedback. And based on the samples that I received, I whittled it down to a particular manufacturer that I wanted to work with. Not just the quality of the samples, but also the effectiveness of their communication, how well the samples were sent to me, etc. I knew that these guys were legit and professional. And I said to them, look, I don't have a budget to develop, build custom molding and custom tooling in any complicated product development. But I can tell you that I liked this component from that sample and that one from that one. What if we moved this bit over here and changed that a little bit? And so what I was able to do was, on a limited budget, basically create like a Frankenstein's monster of a product. I call it a Franken product.
Yeah.
And so therefore I created something completely unique that no one else was selling, but without expensive custom molding or custom tooling. And then I had the factory agree to exclusivity with me on that.
Yeah,
and that was the first product of the brand was called Beast Gear. The first product was called the Beast Rope. And I learned a lot. And I said, I didn't know a lot of things. It's not like I said to them, I want this component to be made of that material, because I didn't know. I had to ask them which component, what material would make this bit faster, And they would tell me. They knew they were the experts in the manufacturing of those products. Of course, that's what they did.
Genius. Right, now I've got it, because I didn't know any of this. And you are the e-commerce expert, and for that matter, Dan's an e-commerce, and Shelley in our team is e-commerce. I don't understand all of the components, and that's why me going through and asking all this stuff is always like the baby steps through it. But I think I may have started with drawing out how I wanted my amazing, titanium like handled skipping rope to be, and probably go OTT. So you got pre-existing components. You sussed out the factory down to good communication. Is the English good? Are they professional? Because that's another big fear. You go and sink in a stack of money into a factory, and their SLAs are dire. They don't come back to you, for 6 weeks, and you're dying a death, with your business. So so you build the components from a pre-existing stuff, put it together, and you got the brand. And that was the next thing. The other thing I went to in my mind map this morning, so find that product, and you've got to be super passionate about it. And I can imagine a lot of people watching this, may go, well, what can I shift? And when we started the series off, Shelley started off with, she started off working for her father's business, and it was swimming pool repair kits, and it was conduits and mains kit. I don't think she was particularly passionate about that, but they created a niche. And I do wonder if people are like, yeah, but what sells well? And they're not passionate about it. And the difference between that is you'll have a lukewarm, okayish business if you work really, really hard. The difference with you is you're really passionate about keeping fit, gym work. You know what you want in a rope because you've been, doing it a lot. So passion's there, and then that gut feeling. And I had the same thing with on Crunch. And how do you find a really good name for like a modern accounting and software fintech? But it's that gut feeling, powerful name. It's like Beast. And I used to go to the gym, but I don't go now. I go to yoga, Bikram yoga, as a slightly bit easier on me. But I've not had that concept of beasted it. But I can imagine you're picking up some big weights, and you go, we really had quite a beasting on that one.
It's funny, after Beast Gear started to become successful, all these knockoff, I'll call them brands, but they weren't brands. They were just selling products. All these knockoff businesses started to create products that were of lower quality but had a similar logo with the name Beast in. And I suppose I should be flattered, but it was frustrating when that started to happen.
Yeah. And I think Amazon is quite famous for it as well, aren't they? If they see really successful private labels are going forward, they will try and copy it. I was
Oh
watching a
yeah,
whole video. I
yeah,
mean,
they will. In
Amazon,
fact,
they've got all the data. They can see exactly what's going on, the level of sales, of course. And I
yeah,
watched this guy, and it was something like quite an ordinary thing. It was like I think it was a rucksack, but like for hikers, and it had, it was
Amazon
just like
ripped it off.
yeah, an Amazon private label ripped it off, and it took him millions of pounds in legal fees to stop them dead. But he did stop them, and they had to withdraw that product.
Yep.
So yeah,
I
even
mean,
your sales channel is trying to rip you off. I mean, this is a competitive world, isn't it?
yeah. So look, Amazon is our sales channel, but it's not the be all and end all. So there's a lot of people out there that talk about building a quote unquote Amazon business. The only
Yeah,
people in the world with an Amazon business are Jeff Bezos and Andy Jassy. If anyone watching this thinks they have an Amazon business, then you actually have what you have is a problem. Amazon is just a sales channel.
yeah,
And if you're building a legit brand that looks and feels and behaves like a real consumer product brand, which has a tribe of raving fans who'll buy all your stuff, then you're selling on Amazon, but you're also selling on your own website. Maybe you're in retail, maybe you're selling on TikTok Shop, maybe you're selling on Walmart, Faire,
yeah.
etc. It's even if Amazon accounts for 98% of your sales, that's absolutely fine, provided you have these other channels too,
Mm,
because that's
yeah,
all Amazon is. And Amazon will, like you said, they'll rip off your products, but they'll also they'll shoot first and ask questions later. So
mm,
let me give you an example. I got home. Well, I was still working my day job at this point, but my business was going really well. And I got home from work one day, and there was a letter on my doormat, and I opened it, and I couldn't read it because it was all in German. But I could recognize a photograph of one of my products, my Beast Grips, which was
yeah.
a design that I had developed, patented, of thick bar adapters for making barbells and dumbbells wider and more difficult to lift. So
Hmm.
there was a photograph of my product. And although I couldn't read the rest of the letter, which was in German, I could make out in big letters the numbers 50,000 euros. And I thought, oh, bother. I think I might have used stronger words than that at the time. But after a bit of sleuthing and some discussion with my intellectual property lawyer, we figured out what was going on. An enormous competitor was trying to sue me out of existence. And they were alleging that I was infringing on their patent, which I wasn't, and we knew I wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And the day after I received this letter, across all of my Amazon accounts, across the UK and all of Europe, that product was suspended. And I started to A, lose out on sales, but B, accumulate storage fees because Amazon were now storing my
Yeah, of
product and it
course.
wasn't shifted.
Jeez. Yeah.
Because of this phony claim. It wasn't true. So Amazon shot first, they shot me down before actually verifying that these guys were lying. And here's the crazy thing. Even if I give the evidence to Amazon that they're lying, the only way to have it Amazon reinstate your product is if the other guys retract their claim. So after a long,
Jeez, I'm stunned.
maybe at least a month, maybe 6
Yeah.
weeks, we managed to basically say to these guys and their lawyers, if you don't retract your dodgy claim, we've realized, we basically figured out what had happened, or we, not quite what had happened, but we found something to our advantage. We were
Yeah.
digging into their patent. And the enormous company who owned this competitor had actually bought the brand from someone just like me several years before.
Hmm.
Only that guy had made a mistake. When he had his patent drawings done, they weren't very good. And we found a loophole, which basically meant that his product wasn't really protected by his own patent because the drawings didn't resemble his product well enough.
Yeah.
And we said, you either withdraw your claim against Ben, or we'll go to court and have your patent invalidated, which will open up the market to everybody. So you either play fair with Ben or you play fair with everyone.
Yeah.
And they withdrew their claim. And I continue to go on to become the market leader. But Amazon will shoot first and ask questions later.
Geez, yeah, that's the big worry, isn't it? So if you the advice is and today it's got so much better from 2016 when you started. You know, we have so many more channels, don't we? Like the TikTok shop, and you know whether it can be
Yep.
sold on Vinted. I don't know. Don't think that your product would have fitted on there. But yeah, there's so many more channels. Your own website and getting the profile up. So we you started with the skipping rope, and you ended up with barbell extensions, and how many products did it end up with in the end?
Probably 15 or 20 products, and then
Yeah,
below those, within those, there would be variations, so color variations, size
yeah,
variations, that type of thing. And it was a range. So we basically had three ranges. We had like the conditioning range, which was for things like CrossFit,
hmm,
or just generally going to the gym. We had the strength range, so weightlifting belts, weightlifting straps, that type of thing.
yeah,
And then we had the boxing/combat sport range. So
uh-huh.
kind of three sub niches within the overall niche of strength and training.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So coming back to the beginning, and a bit I've just gone through in the book is the funding of it, and you know that's always an interest to me because you know the businesses I've started, I've created software and service, yeah, often both with pure360.com, an email marketing system with which is anti-spam and Crunch. This feels like it requires a lot of money invested up front for the stock. Does it, or can you start off like fairly inexpensively?
Um, yes and no. When I started in 2016, it was cheaper to start than it is now. And that's
Yeah,
because of there's more competition because more people have cottoned on to the fact that they can start a business as well. And because the cost of advertising has gone up. And so it's a lot more expensive to get started. I started with about 2.5 grand. So it was the £2,000 I had in my bank account at the time, and 500 quid from my parents. And that was enough for me to order the minimum order quantity of 500 skipping ropes and get them sent over from China and get started. These
two and a
days,
half grand.
yeah.
Well,
Uh,
wow.
and I'll give you an example of the scale of this. So the first order I placed was for 500 skipping ropes. And one particular skipping rope within our range was our bestseller. And the last order I placed before I sold the business was for 250,000 of those same skipping ropes. And that came from 2.5 grand. And over the course of the business, I borrowed a further, I don't know, 10 or 15K off my parents and then paid that back and
Yeah.
took one Amazon loan. And other than that, I was able to totally bootstrap it.
It's sounding so exciting. So it's more expensive now. How much do you reckon you need if you were going to start a Beast Gear brand now to kick it off?
10 grand. At
At
least
least 10 grand. Okay. But it's still quite, what I love about this, Ben, is it's accessible, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know,
it is
if
accessible.
you know,
Yeah.
if you're wanting to be a consultant, and we've got you know probably thousands of consultants at Crunch, you know, using our accounting services. That's easy because you've got a skill set. You may have been in a corporate. You're taking that skill set in. That's incredibly cheap. I mean, it's just you. It doesn't. Nothing else is required. Recruitment businesses, all those sort of things, selling skills, contracting, freelancing, whatever you do. But you know, I love the tangibility of creating real products. You know, you know, we create software and service. I love building up fantastic products, but they're software products, and I love building up teams. There's something really lovely about the tangibility of a real life product, isn't there? And you always think it's out of reach for any of us, but it's not.
It's not, and you know what you said there made me think of a few things. The feeling you get when your first samples arrive or prototypes arrive, and you feel them and you look at them and they look slick and professional, and you're like, I made that. I thought of that.
Yeah.
And here it is, and this is going to be a product that people can buy. And then the next best feeling after that, or probably even better, but the next amazing feeling you'll experience is your first sale on the internet.
Yeah.
And your first sale from a stranger, because when you start, hopefully your family and friends are going to help you out and buy it for you. And then the next one is when you see your product in the wild, like by chance, a stranger in the wild has your product. And
So that's beautiful. No. Sorry, Ben, to interrupt. That's beautiful timing. So that was another question. What was it and I'm just segueing up nicely. That key moment, that turning point where you realise the brand's actually gonna make it. This is when you see it out in the real world, don't you? With someone that you just didn't know, didn't talk
Yeah,
to.
I mean, there's been a few moments. I remember the very first. I was training at. I can tell you exactly where it was. It was Aberdeen Sports Village, in Aberdeen. The gym that I was training at the time, and a guy had one of my products. It was my core sliders, which was a core training piece of kit.
Yeah.
And he had them, and I thought, do I go and talk to him? Like, this is what do I do? And in the end, I did, and I thought that he would think I was weird, but actually he was trying to oblige you. Oh, that's really cool! Like, you've made this, and I randomly bought it online, and here we are. And then over time, it got better and better. So I started to see people posting about it on social media, and then I remember the most amazing one of all was I received an email from a customer saying, "Have you seen this?" was the subject line, and in the email was just a screen grab, and it was a world famous UFC fighter called Michael Venom Page had used my gum shield at the time he was fighting in the Bellator MMA, and so my gum shield had the word mouth guard, had the word Beast Gear across it, and he was kind of like grimacing into the camera before the fight with Beast Gear across his teeth, and I hadn't paid him to do that. I didn't know the guy. He had bought my product because the brand was having an impact.
Yeah. I mean, that's your ultimate influencer, isn't it? Actually using it. But and again, it comes down to that name. It is such a good name. That gut feeling you had, the name is so good that it goes in line with that, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, this is that. In that case, is manly and not being sexist, manly violence. And I'm gonna beast this. I'm gonna get him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the name. There are great brands out there who have built a great brand because of a lot of things to do with their brand and not the name. But if you can get the name, if you can nail the name, then that's going a long way to it. I mean, you can't out hack a rubbish product. You still have to have a quality product.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a great name that is either descriptive of what you do, or descriptive of the product, or descriptive of the feelings that you want to convey. Or alternatively, something that's just very, very memorable, like Google, for instance.
It has to be short as well, doesn't it? That's what I find. I mean, my rule, Ben, is you want to you need to be able to have it so powerful and clear that it can be shouted across, in a noisy pub environment. Like my accountant's completely ballsed up my accounts. Which was the accountant you use? Crunch. It's not like Smith, Wise, and Bertleton Brown, like anything like that.
Yes.
Beast is just sheer, it's another one of those super powerful names. I'll tell you my little story on Crunch, because I was working on it because it's a complicated product to put double entry accounting software together and a live tax system. So I've got all the tech going on, and I came up with all these names, and you'd often have a name in the shower. I always found that, and there'd be these wet footprints across the bedroom, and I've got this big pad, and I've scribbled all these names. In the end, I took my mate JB, who was in the village up from me when I was near Brighton. And I said, mate, can you please help me? This is driving me mad. It needs to be really powerful. And he goes, like in seconds, he goes, well, it's number crunching. It's Crunch. And I'm like, genius!
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's great. Running out of the pub going,
frantically doing trademark searches and hoping no one else has got it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I actually had to do that. And being in the middle of the countryside, there's no internet. So I have to go to the nearest mound, I kid you not, near the pub, hold the phone up, try and see if there's any domains available for it. And Nestle own pretty much everyone, bugger. But there is that one that Cyber Squatter's got. So, but yeah, no, you made me remember that. That whole brand creation thing is a lovely thing.
You just made me think of something really important, and it relates back to that story of when that competitor tried to sue me for my Beast scripts, which is this. It's about intellectual property. Well, it's a business principle in general, but here's an intellectual property example. So I've learned that cheap is expensive and expensive is cheap, because if I hadn't learned that lesson early on, I might have been in a big pickle when those guys tried to sue me, because I had worked with a top intellectual property firm to make sure that my product had the right patents and wasn't infringing on anybody's patents.
Yeah.
But I had a lucky escape a bit earlier than that. You see, when I first started, I was learning a lot of stuff from the internet, and I learned a lot of great stuff from the internet. But I also fell into the trap of a few myths. So on some forums, people were saying that, look, you don't need to pay a lawyer to go do your trademark. You can do it yourself. And so I was so smug when I got my letter from the Intellectual Property Office confirming that I had trademarked Beast Gear.
Yeah, good.
About a year later, I was getting some free advice from an intellectual property lawyer down at the library. They were just doing some pro bono sessions at the library for small businesses. And they looked at my trademark and they explained how weak it was, because I had registered it, I think, in only one class. And within that class, I hadn't gone particularly, wide or deep on the scope of what I wanted it to protect. And anyone could really have come in and started using the name Beast Gear on all sorts of things that I was selling or wanted to sell. Luckily, they hadn't. And I was then able to pay those guys to go and fix it. And actually, here's a fun exercise anyone can do. If you go to the Intellectual Property Office website, ipo.gov.uk, search Beast Gear, you'll find some trademarks registered in 2016, and you'll find the same name, Beast Gear, registered again in 2017. The 2016 version is my crappy attempt, and the 2017 version is the actual one that I got done.
Couldn't you adapt that then?
No,
you adapt your original
the advice was that they should do it again.
Do it again, yeah. Okay.
I think that might have been because the first time it had been done by me, and they weren't the representative on that one. I can't remember the exact reason.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they did it again. And of course, I had my lucky escape. But I learned the lesson. Cheap is expensive and expensive is cheap. In other words, it pays to invest in getting things right the first time. Yeah. And I use that principle for everything I do in business and life now.
Yeah, no, I think you've done a great job there. I mean, I'm sure people watching this is going to go, oh my God, I can just imagine racking up stacks of legal fees. I mean, I know what it's like with trademark attorneys, because they always want to widen the categories so much, don't they? And go so Darren, that's the UK, and you're going where next, and where next, and so that's another 10 for that country, and we want to go wide on these categories, and there's another one in Australia, and you're going to go wide on these categories. And go, oh dear. So I knew this would happen. There's so much to explore in what you've done, and I'm trying to get the granular details out of it, because that's what I'm sure people are going to want to know. But how did you do that? But how did you do that? And it's all these little steps. And I think this is where we'll be both of us plugging the book, because I love books like you've written, really good startup books, but actually help. And that's what the channel's meant to do. It's all the steps, step by step. So let's jump right ahead. And I think we might, if you're up for it, have a part 2 to this, because there's a load more to it to explore. But we'll see if we can nail the majority of it in this one. And thanks for that, Ben. So you're 3 years on, and you've gone from nothing, from your first, was it 250 skipping ropes? Was it?
Yeah, 500. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 500 skipping ropes, up to a $6 million turnover business selling, how many products again was it? It was 15, 16?
Between 15 and 20 parent products.
15 and 20. Okay. So how big was the team? I'm imagining a huge office in Aberdeen. No?
The team was me and 3 part-time freelancers sitting in the Philippines.
No.
Yep.
Genius. Well, that's pretty impressive. So the net profit of the business is only eaten up by the Amazon costs and your channel cost and shipping and obviously the manufacturer. There's no huge wage bills going on here.
None. No warehousing other than paying third-party warehouses, but none of my own property. I didn't have to worry about full-time employees and all the rigmaroles that comes with that. I had very low overheads. I only paid myself enough that I needed, so that I could keep.
That's always the golden rule. Yep. Yeah. That is just amazing, and that's why we're finding, in our e-commerce, section of the business, is that you imagine, well, initially as we, go into the market, we always wanted to do e-commerce, and you go in there and you think, well, yeah, this is going to be a sizable team given the turnover of this business. And it's like, oh, you've got 6 people. Well, this is just staggering. I mean, Crunch by 2019 had 192 people in the team. 192. It takes a lot to build and maintain accounting software. Then you've got the accountants, you've got the client services department, you've got the sales and marketing. And therefore, e-commerce businesses are just sheer genius in not having to have massive, team management headaches, which and need big people teams to run them.
You can build them so lean. And sure, there comes a point where you're going to need to build a bigger team. And I was probably at that crossroads when I sold. And I know that one of the new brands that I'm building, I have ambitions to probably have a team local to me, if we want to take it where I think we can take it. But as you're getting started and you're I'm going to mix metaphors here. You're building the rocket ship and you're building the plane while you fly it. You can be lean and you can take advantage of the small world that we live in and differences of economy, because it's very difficult. Sometimes you're like, well, I can't afford to pay someone to do this. Well, actually, you can actually have a very positive impact on the world, because you can pay somebody who lives in another part of the world what is for them in their economy a very, very good wage, and it's cheap for you. So everybody wins. And that's what I did.
That's amazing. So I think we've touched on some of the intellectual property issues and people trying it on. You see that happen so much. I occasionally, when I get time, fly X-Plane, the flight simulator, because I was halfway through my PPL flying course, and they had someone try it on, some patent on some innocuous part of software that is normal for, say, a graphic, a sprite moving around, a graphic moving around a screen, and they tried it on with them, and you have to invest millions of dollars in that case to fight it. So that was one challenge. What was another challenge that that you had to overcome in this huge growth engine in 3 years?
Sure. All sorts of things. I mean, I was victim of a lot of black hat attacks by mostly Chinese sellers. So I remember when I started to get returns of my products turn up that were counterfeit. They weren't mine.
No.
And not only were they not mine, they were terrible. And then I was getting terrible reviews on my product as a result of this. The worst incident was when these Chinese black hatters were sending stock into Amazon's fulfillment centers in the UK, which the boxes were full of either air or pebbles. And eventually, after a lot of back and forthing, I was able to get somebody this was on Amazon, not to do with my own website. This was with Amazon. And somebody in the Amazon Seattle office was able to do what's called brand gating and prevent anyone other than me selling my product. Because Amazon is an open marketplace, right? I could buy a pair of Nike trainers from the shop now and then go and sell them on Amazon. But they gated my brand so that only I could sell. That was a huge one. And then another one, which I think is actually, there's a great lesson in this, was this. So in 2017, I was selling in the UK. Again, this is an Amazon thing. I was selling in the UK, and I was also selling in mainland Europe, but my stock was all in the UK. So if Giovanni in Rome wanted to order my product, he had to be patient and wait several days for it to get there from the UK, and he had to pay extra shipping, which meant my sales in mainland Italy were not that high, and my products were ranked lower than products which were stored in mainland Europe. So I joined the Amazon Pan-EU scheme, because we hadn't left the EU at the time, which meant that when I sent my stock into a fulfillment center in the UK, say Coventry, Amazon would take some of it and distribute it for free across their fulfillment centers right across Europe, so that Hans in Dusseldorf could get it on Prime, and somebody in Milan could do the same. And that meant that pretty much overnight my sales doubled. But it was a huge headache to do this. I had to register for VAT in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, Czech Republic, Sweden, and the Netherlands. And doing so was a ton of paperwork and very, very difficult. In fact, I remember to register for VAT in Spain, this was hilarious. I had to find the one guy in Aberdeen who could register me for VAT there. and he had to stamp my documents with a medieval style wax seal. He literally took out matches, melted wax onto the paper, and then stamped it. It was comedy. But tons of my competitors couldn't be bothered to jump through all these hoops. And so when I did jump through the hoops, I basically doubled my sales overnight. I got the reward of jumping through the hoops. And so the lesson there is, if you see something that's hard to do, take a look on the other side and see what the reward is. Because sometimes if they say jump, it is actually worth it to say how high.
So you've gone basically multi-currency, multi-country, and with multiple warehouses.
At that point, we had actually the whole time I was using Amazon's fulfillment centers in the UK and Europe.
Yep.
And towards the end of when I owned the business, also in Australia and the UAE, I entered those markets shortly before I exited. But I also was using one third-party fulfillment warehouse in the UK, which was fulfilling a lot of stuff for sales on my website.
Yeah. Got it. Because that's where the complexity comes, and we see it with the customers who do go for the multi-regions and actually have to warehouse in a number of different locations. And what you've been through, the VATMOS, is just painful, and almost it's so complicated. You need another specialist third party that controls that to actually have any chance of keeping up with the correct, VAT legislation and the filings, which are of course all in different days of the month. Yep. Or quarter, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So, hats off for anyone who goes to that next global, step. Is just amazing. So, we'll try and wrap this up on up to sale and exit, and then we're edited it up. And what I'm looking to do is, we'll look at through the content some of the assets you've given and see what else can be inserted in there. So we turn this into just a 2-screen thing, as I was telling you before, into something a little bit more interesting to watch. And Luke will be editing away. So diving in, let's finish off the getting to the sale. So. But there's been obviously challenges and some significant ones. I mean, I really feel for you on that letter landing on that €50,000 or whatever the threat was from that particular firm. That is horrendous. It's gut-wrenching stuff when you think, how much will this cost me to defend it? Can I defend it? What will happen? Will that product ever go back on stream? If you have to get them to withdraw it. So I can only imagine all these other challenges you're talking about are just nutty. So you've got this, it's effectively, it does feel a little bit, it certainly does to me, it's like your baby. You've built this amazing business up. You've got products you're really proud of, that they're the highest quality, the quality you want. How do you get to actually going, I'm going to sell this, I'm going to part with my love of 3 years, my creation? When did that happen?
Yeah, I sold this is kind of a bit coincidental. We're recording this on November the 1st.
Yeah.
I sold the business on October 31st, 2019. So this is the 5-year anniversary of the morning after I sold it. So
wow.
the business was sold at 11:56 on Halloween 2019. The deal had to get done that day, or all the modeling that the buyer had done would no longer be valid, and they'd have to go and do it again for their investors. And we got the deal done 4 minutes before the deadline.
Wow.
But anyway, I made the decision to sell earlier that year, probably around February, because I had begun to hear whispers that buying and selling e-commerce businesses was becoming a little bit more mainstream. If you wanted to buy an e-commerce business before then, the bank would look at you like you had two heads, because nobody thought an e-commerce business was a real big boy grown-up business, because it didn't have a roof and walls and doors. And I came to realize that I was sitting on a very valuable asset. I also began to appreciate that there was a fair amount of risk tied up in my business, because so much of my business was reliant on Amazon. But I was also at a crossroads where I needed to scale the team, maybe locally, but certainly there was going to be a lot of work to be done if I wanted to expand, for instance, into North America.
Yeah.
My wife was pregnant. We wanted to move house. And I realized that I could take some chips off the table and give us a significant safety net.
Mm.
And I didn't know when the bubble would burst. E-commerce businesses were starting to become valuable, and I didn't know how long that would last for.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to sell it.
So part emotional, because you've got that lovely occurrence, and I remember it so well, like the baby's coming, like getting the nest ready, and also the logical that how long are these businesses gonna be worth a lot of money? Is it going to get really complicated? And I think that's the natural path of building a business. There's these points where to get over this little next chasm of growth, you've got to invest over it.
Yep.
to get to put, say you're going into North America, like you said, like, well, that needs X amount of team. I'm going to need $500,000 in there to build it up, or whatever you'd need. And it takes, that you end up investing like all the profits back in for that next level of growth. So I think you might have called it at just that right point.
Yeah, I was a little early, unbeknownst to me, of course. And so I sold, late 2019, but of course COVID hit early 2020.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, several things happened. First of all, everyone was buying everything online. So sales went bonkers. But in particular, fitness gear sales went crazy, provided that fitness gear could be used at home. And a lot of what I was doing could. So my sales went bananas. At the same time, multiples being paid for e-commerce businesses went bananas because everybody thought this is it. It's been coming. The move from offline to online has been coming, and this is the catalyst that's really going to push it forward, and then there's no going back. And so I would have got, not only would I have got a higher multiple for my business, but actually it would have been a higher multiple of a higher level of profit because my sales went bonkers after I sold. Because after I sold, I still had access to all the sales data because I was doing some consulting with the new owners. And so I probably, in hindsight, would have been better selling 6 months later. But of course, I didn't know that at the time.
No.
So it was the right thing at the right time for me and my family.
Yeah, I think for so many people, and I spoke to someone about 3 months ago who had sold their business just before the pandemic kicked in, and had the pandemic kicked in, and his business would have been totaled. So it was so dependent, isn't it? Some businesses would have worked even better. Online sales. I mean, this is something wildly different. But yeah, you never know. Nobody knew. I remember walking down the street in Brighton when we had a big HQ, about 18,000 square feet, and some guy was ranting, going, "This is all stupidity." They just like carry on, and then sitting down with the whole leadership team, going, "We're going to probably have to start working remotely. This doesn't seem real." And we'd always built this big contingency plan, this big disaster recovery plan for everybody to work from home in case the office burnt down. And I just can't believe it kicked into gear. But we just never knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. No, none of us did. And it did. And it was weird.
So, it was very, very weird. But yeah, I remember it well. That's when we started tuning the business, up, even like tuning every single department up, tuning up products. I actually kind of weirdly enjoyed that time. So you've gone for that sale just before the pandemic. You've got a nice number. We're probably talking in the millions of dollars that you would have got. You've secured this nest egg for your nest, your new family coming in. So how did it all feel? Was that just job done and you walked off, or did you have to do an earn out sort of period with them?
Yeah, I mean, it felt pretty surreal, especially when I started to receive wires into my bank account. I was like,
a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, I've never seen that much money before. In terms of earnout, yes, there was an earnout, but I didn't have to actually work in the day-to-day sense. I basically did some consulting with them, helped them launch some new products, and they managed to monumentally mess up the entire brand, which is not unusual.
No.
So for a private equity firm, when they buy an e-commerce business, they, along with others in this industry, the business model is basically acquire e-commerce businesses, roll them up, make them more valuable than the sum of their parts, grow them through economies of scale, and then eventually exit or go public. The particular firm that bought my brand is actually currently in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But there we are. Yeah, I had a 2-year earnout.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, after the first year, my involvement was down to 0.
Got it. I mean, that's the annoying thing. And, you know, I love what we've created at Crunch. I love the team, and it would be heart-wrenching to see them, you know, the acquirer completely balls it up. But we see it again and again in the marketplace. You know, a private equity you know, firm does a big roll-up of accountancy softwares and services and completely total it because they haven't got our passion, you know, to do the right marketing, to get the right influencers on board. The influencers don't want to come on board because it's a private equity firm and they don't really care. And it's kind of this vicious circle of ruination of this a beautiful thing you've created. So yeah, I think we've got, this is where part 2 comes in, and I don't think I should spoil it, but there is a brilliant part to this. See, we'll come to that in the second part of this webinar, but that's brilliant. So you've, in 3 years and with a 2-year earnout, so 5 years in total, you've got a multi-million-dollar sale from an e-commerce brand where you knew nothing about it in the first place.
Yep.
That's the genius of it.
By qualification, I'm a dolphin nerd.
I know. Yeah. So I'll let you do the next bit because we've got to have some sellings from you. But this is been like, you know, as I say, I've got on here some of my favorite books. Where is it? It is, no, it's there. That is so old now. Against the Odds, James Dyson. Just I love him. But all of my I've probably got another set of these sort of startup-y books, and I absolutely love them. And I thought this morning, I didn't have a chance to do it yesterday. I did 10 TikToks in a row, and I was quite proud that I actually had done them. They're a little bit more difficult to record because you've got to record them on the iPhone. And I'm like, right, this morning, Monty wakes up, not as early as he did for Halloween, which was a godsend. And I downloaded it. So Quit Stalling, Build Your Brand, by, of course, Ben Leonard yourself. Tell us a little bit about that and how they get it. Obviously,
yeah, sure. Yeah, there it is. You can get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle. I'm working on the audiobook.
Oh, are you? I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. So look, it's a playbook from ideation all the way through to exit on how to build a consumer product e-commerce brand from someone who's been there and done it, and basically proving that you don't need a business degree or an MBA to crush it in e-commerce.
Yeah, that's what I love, and this is what I really want to do with all of it. I think we're lining up a mechanic, you know, who was, I don't know what the story, the background is, but he wasn't a mechanic before, and he always wanted to be a mechanic. So a new presenter, Paul Norford, is going to interview him. We're going to interview loads of people, and people doing bizarre things but loving it, and you know, leaving behind a job they hated, or a boss they hated, or you know, the corporation or an industry they hated, going to do what they love. And then your book is exactly what I think everybody here would love, is that step by step, the thinking. I couldn't possibly, you know, getting across all the negatives. I couldn't possibly do this. No, yes, you can. Look, I did it. You know, in your case, dolphin nerd. I think that's you know, very, very. You're far more qualified than just dolphins, I'm sure. And it's all the single steps, the thinking, the overcoming stuff. And I said to Claire, came down because it's half term, and she said, "What are you reading?" I said, "It's Ben's book. We're having an interview later." And she said, "I want to read that next," because she's got an idea that we've talked about that she wants to do. She was an interior designer. And now she's been a mum for, you know, Hugo's now 9, Monty's now 5. She wants to do something. She's itching to do something. So she now wants to read that because it's those steps. And it's that I can't do it. How could I do it? I don't have got a clue. I need to speak to Ben. We'll start with reading the book. So there's my heartfelt advice to all of you. If you're wanting to do e-commerce, you've got to read this book. This is genius. So we'll put this in the notes, under YouTube, under the video, so you'll be able to access that. And I think for the next time, we'll talk about all the other things you're doing in terms of consultancy and helping e-commerce brands do it properly, following your formulaic, step by step of how to achieve success. And then you've got your other business, which is the exiting business. And I absolutely support anybody going to exit. It's so easy. These buyers are often absolute M&A, mergers and acquisitions experts. They will do everything they can to screw the price down. So to have someone along your side who knows and been there, got the T-shirt with the blood still on it, is absolutely the most useful person you'll ever have. So I think we'll touch on that next, and what's going to happen with your baby, your beast gear brand for the next time. So look, I knew we'd do this. There's so much to unpack with what you've done in such short space of time. I think it's beautiful, the fact that you were in such a completely different world, environmental engineer, and I'm going to go and do this. And it's interesting, isn't it, what life throws at us, to give that break in your life to be able to do this. And it was kind of like meant to be. And thankfully you fully recovered from that. But I love the whole story. So Ben, look, hugest thanks for coming on and spending your time on the Crunch channel, helping everybody, which I know you're passionate about as well. And then the next one, let's start looking into this exciting story. What's part 2 of Beast Gear, which I love, and we can look at your other businesses in more detail.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Thanks so much, Ben. All right, see you soon.